great to be here. I'm here today to talk about how open source is democratizing knowledge in academia, just the way that it has in enterprise IT. Making open source work requires lots of effort in two key directions. First, you have to convince people that what you're building in the open is as good as what's made the proprietary way. Second, you have to convince people that embracing open is in their best interest and everyone else's. For the last 20 years, I've been part of a community doing this kind of work in education. In the late 1990s, while teaching electrical and computer engineering at Rice University, I was frustrated by the textbooks available for my classes. They all had three things in common. They were too expensive, they didn't cover what I needed them to cover, and they just didn't fit the way that I wanted to teach. Unfortunately, the academic textbook world, just like the software world at that time, was a pretty proprietary place. I couldn't just take a textbook, modify it to meet my students' needs, and then use it in class. There was no infrastructure or legal framework for that. It turned out that many of my colleagues had the exact same itch that needed to be scratched. So we got together, and with colleagues from around the country and around the world, we started building it. We formed a project we called Connections with the goal of developing open source course materials powered by open source tools that would let anyone freely innovate and improve them. Over time, the project grew and became the open source publisher OpenStax, which is a unit of Rice University. OpenStax creates a wide variety of learning materials for instructors and students to use and remix, but we got our start with college textbooks. Our first challenge was to develop texts that could compete with the proprietary ones that we were so frustrated with. We had to build a product that conformed to the industry standards, in our case meeting the standard scope and sequence of a course, and providing additional teaching materials and thousands of problems and solutions. We engaged like-minded scholars to write our texts and, crucially, to review the work of their peers. Peer review is a lot like code review. It turns a set of facts into a body of knowledge. Building this community and infrastructure was key to democratizing knowledge in higher education. Let's talk a little bit about how we engage the market. Students typically don't have a say in what textbook is used in their course. Faculty are the sole decision makers, leading to a classical principal-agent problem. And so, in the beginning, convincing faculty that we weren't just a flash in the pan was key. From the start, librarians were key advocates because they help faculty find the best resources for their courses. To support librarians in their important work, we created an institutional partner network of now over 70 colleges and universities that wanted to support the open textbook movement in general and OpenStax in particular. To convince faculty, we crisscrossed the country, attending academic conferences and meeting with open education advocates who wanted to help get more textbooks in front of more faculty. And it worked. Today, our growing library of over 40 textbooks covers the major introductory college courses, degree programs like business, and even a range of high school subjects. Our texts are in use by millions of students at more than half of all U.S. colleges and universities, as well as over 100 countries. And we're particularly proud of our community of more than 35,000 educators who are embracing our more open approach to scholarship. The open source spirit runs strong in this community, and there are now hundreds of versions that have been customized in use around the country. In fact, the official Adams First chemistry text in our library is a forked version of our standard chemistry textbook, and it's now one of the top books in its market. OpenStax textbooks have saved students over $1 billion to date. Even better, for the first time in 40 years, the cost of college texts is actually dropping, thanks in significant part to high-quality and free alternatives like OpenStax. This is great news because a surprisingly large number of students have to make the choice every semester between buying groceries and buying their textbook. This sort of impact is possible thanks to strong support from a network of contributors, funders, faculty, students, librarians, and more. Also critical is an ecosystem of over 60 companies who operate in a symbiotic, sustaining relationship with OpenStax, much like the Red Hat Linux community. Going forward, we recognize that just giving a student a free book isn't enough. So we're building new technologies that go far beyond an instructor's customization of a textbook for their class to textbooks that can be customized for each individual student. Because in the end, each of us learns differently. We're infusing these digital texts with multimedia features and machine learning analytics so that students don't just read about ideas, but can actually interact with them and receive continual feedback on their learning progress. With the COVID-19 pandemic accelerating the move to digital learning at all levels of education and exacerbating pre-existing iniquities in serious ways, helping every student reach their full potential has never been more important. Thanks so much for your time. If you'd like to learn more about OpenStax or join our instructor community, check out our website at openstax.org.